All right, guys. In my previous video, I told you how I see the world, or at least how I see the future. I gave you my vision. And then right after I told you about that, I told you what I want to do. So I gave you my agenda. And in the process of that, I promised that I would tell you about the art of questions, what I've learned and what I'd like to share. As we go through like the little scenario I had where we said we had trains of thought and they were fighting and colliding. We've been discriminating and fighting and having all these issues, and I want to stop. And I'm saying, let's just kind of get off that train of thought, that kind of way of thinking. Let's get off that bloodline of chaos and move in a new direction, right? And when I did that, I asked you to let me share a little story with you. So I want to do that. Before we begin, I just want to share a quick little scenario. So imagine you're wherever you're at right now, doesn't really matter, and all of a sudden, boom, bang, whatever, there's a mysterious noise, right? So the thing that's going on with that is you're going to be like, what's up with that? How do I fix that? How do I solve that? What do I do? What was that? Right? It could be any number of things. Somebody could have just broken into wherever you were and now they're coming after you. Somebody in your family or a pet or just someone's around could have bumped into something. Picture frame or something could have fallen off the wall or off a shelf. Or, maybe the spot that you're in is just haunted. Who knows? Or even worse than that, it could be the zombie apocalypse. But regardless of whatever it is, there's a decision to be made. And it's essentially, how do we deal with this, right? If there's a break-in, you should probably grab a weapon for self-defense. And I should learn how to say the word weapon instead of weapon. In addition to that, if your family or somebody bumped into something, maybe you should grab a first aid kit. One of them could be hurt. They could use your help. And if it was that picture that fell off the wall, well, maybe you should put on some slippers or some shoes so you don't cut your feet. Or if the house is haunted, I highly suggest you get some holy water because you got a problem on your hands. And lastly, if it is the zombie apocalypse, you do want to grab that weapon, but I suggest a quiet one so they don't all show up at your house, right? So essentially, why am I bringing this all up? Like, why is this the way I decided to start off this scenario? Well, let's get into that, right? In my mind, what's next and how you deal with it are two entirely separate entities. You don't know why it matters until you deal with one of the two of those things and how you feel about them together. The reason why you need a weapon if there's a break in or a zombie apocalypse is your self defense. The reason why you chose to grab slippers if something broke is because you want to, prevent yourself from getting further hurt. All of these scenarios are about self defense, about saving yourself, about keeping your life, trying to stay alive and be good, right? So I'm also aware of the fact that some of you may be like, screw this scenario. Where can I go grab some food after this? Like I'm hungry. Or, you might even be thinking, where in the world is this presentation going? Or how long is this presentation going to take? Or you might even be like, how about this guy just go ahead and I'm not going to go any further than that because I want kids to be able to watch this. But regardless, what we start seeing is that the basic questions that we were taught in school of who, what, when, where, why, and how are all represented in this picture all at once, right? So I want to go over to that and break down the art of questions, right? So essentially, when we started this off, on the top right hand side, you had what were we going to do about it? What action we were going to take to preserve our lives, right? And then we decided, after we looked at the spectrum of options, how do we want to go about it? And in what order do we feel that that's the possibility of that action going down? And then if you were thinking about time, or when is this going to be done, or how long do I have before the zombies get into the house, you're essentially trying to figure out when, how much time do I have? And then on the other side, you have space. And down in that bottom right-hand corner, that's just the coordinates for wherever you are on Earth for latitude and longitude, GPS. It's essentially how they figure out where you are. If they know what location you're in, then they can find out where you are by measuring that distance, right? But as you can tell from what we said before, all of these things are separate from one another, right? So if you know where something is, you can decide what action you want to take. That gives you a reason to figure out how you want to deal with it. And if you know how much time is going on, well, then you can describe what your next action should be. All of it works together in a nice, lovely little connection, but these connections only exist when you answer two of the things that are in line together. So let's go in the opposite direction. You had a little bit of free time, so you sat down to watch this video. I already in advance had put the order of the presentation in order. And I'm hoping that you trust, you have a reason to believe that I know where this is going, what action this is going to have in your life. So I hope that you'll sit in the space that you're at and let me go ahead and continue, right? It all works in a cycle, no matter which way you chose to go with it. But regardless, you have to start somewhere with the realization that you have to make a circle and you can't skip past the reason why, and what and how are completely separate from one another. And this brings us to the next thing. So if you've seen the tagline for the website, I'll talk about a community trying to work on the art of adulting. So let's get into the steps with that. So essentially, if you take those same setups and questions we had, which are the bottom 6, your order for how, your reason for why, your life for what, your location for where, your description for who, and your time for when, well, let's go ahead and combine that with some things we already know that exist, right? We have a mind, we have our soul, and then we have a body, right? And even we think about the fact that our body and our mind are separate from one another, and that anytime you find yourself in an experience that feels bad or good or great or regardless of whatever it is, it imprints itself as a particular time and place in your life. So that brings us to the order of these things, right? If you have some time on your hand and you don't know what to do with it, you don't know how to bring order to that time, well, then you should find something to study to strengthen your mind. That's the direction you should take for how to spend your time. Find something or someone to study to make yourself better. Then on the other side, well, if you're in a good place, right? You're in a good spot in your life, you're trying to figure out what to do next or what I should do, well, then you should practice. You should find some way to get your body to practice either what you already knew, already do, or find something new to practice, right? And then I'm going to go with something a lot of people may or may not have thought of, since description is also about who you are. If you've ever wondered, what's my reason for living? What's my reason for carrying on, for moving forward? Because like I've said through the intro on this, I've been through some things in my life. I've attempted to commit suicide twice. I've been depressed. I've been down. I've been beat. I've been out. I've been trying to find a reason to carry on my life, a reason to wake up in the morning. And what I'm realizing is that the reason for that is your experiences, your story. You got to believe in the fact that you can do something with your life. You can move forward. You can achieve something. You can accomplish whatever you want, and somehow you'll find a way to figure it out. You'll bring order to it. Once you have all of these boxes checked in place, that'll give your life focus. You'll know what to do and where to go and how to go about it. So I'm going to slide over to one more slide. So like I said before, when you know what you want to study for your mind, what you want to practice for your body, and you've given yourself a decision of beliefs, or you've already accumulated some great experiences, when you combine the three of them together, your life has focus. Then on the left-hand side, if your life has direction, if you know how to spend your time, then that means you're spending your time meaningfully, right? You have a reason to spend your time. Then you look over on the right-hand side. If you are in a good space, whether that's thinking of your mind or your body, just the general feeling when we say in a good space, then that means you should take action in that space. or you need to find a new space where you feel comfortable to take action. This also describes why we have locations that we might particularly love. There's something about them. There's a reason. There's an experience that happened there for our body. And every time we go there, we practice that. So maybe there's a restaurant you went with a loved one that you love going back to over and over again. So the experience of going back feels great, right? This is what I'm referring to when I talk about that. So another thing you'll also notice a lot on the website is that I talk about art and language. I want to change and shift the way you think about that. I might as well just go ahead and use the name of the podcast, video vlog, or whatever you want to call it that I'm doing. I want to tilt and shift your thinking about two words. One of them is language, and the other one is art. Okay. See, language has to have order in order for you to be able to understand what the person's saying, or else they'll be all over the place. So when your language is in order, the way you express yourself to the world is in order, then you're also living a meaningful life. That's the reason why you can have the language of dressing well, the language of studying the right people. So another thing I want to say with that is that your language, more often than not, is your job title. So if you are a chef, then you speak in the language of your tools and skills, your knife and your food. You know the language of cooking, right? But then that brings us to the other side because we also call it the culinary arts. Well, it's arts because you practice it. You continually do it over and over and you create something new. Or through the experience of practicing over and over again, you develop either great technique or great skill, or you find out that there's something new you want to explore, but that can only happen when you have the experience of doing that same language over and over again. So that's the reason why I call it the art of adulting. If you follow this map and you do this, then you're doing the language of being an adult. It goes back to the same thing with the art of questions. If you're using the bottom 6 parts of this, then you're studying and working on the art of questions. All right. I can get into this a lot more. All of it makes these perfect little circles. The same way the 6 questions will tell you how something lines up. When you line up all 9, it nice and easily lines up your life. So a lot of people have been asking me, why is this website called Station Park Social Club? It's kind of long, it's a mouthful. Well, if you notice, there's some space. There's some points of intersection between these 9 moments. I like to think of them as roads. I mean, after all, I said that we were down in a train of thought that was chaotic. Well, now I've given us a city, a club, a home, a park for us to be able to work things out collectively together. So let's get into how those relationships work so you can understand how this way of thinking isn't just about your life or conversations. It's also about the relatedness between complex ideas, right? So station, if you feel like you're stuck in a rut and you can't move, then you know what? You always have time. Time is something you can always take advantage of. So if you're stuck on station, well then hey, just go ahead and ride up to study. Well, what if I feel like I'm parked? Like I can't quite, get out of this rut. Well, if you're parked, then that means you're already in your car. You're already in a position of being able to move. Then that's your body telling you, hey man, it's time to get this car moving. We're in the middle of the street. Let's get going. Right? So then if you're like, you know what? I want to go out tonight. I want to party. I want to be social. I want to have an experience. Well, if you'd been studying and you'd been practicing, you'll know what kind of experience you want to have. If when you go out to a bar on the weekends, you have fun and you have a good time and your experience is positive, well, then you should practice having that positive experience again. But if you find yourself going out partying and hanging out, and every time you go out, it's a bad experience, people are throwing up, it's not a good time, it doesn't quite feel right, well, then that's an experience you should stop having, and you should go find a new club of people to hang out with. Oh, yeah. You notice that I switched up that bottom part for description to bloodline. The very first post that I had everybody go to, I talked about the trains of thought. And I wanted to give this kind of scenario in your mind of things clashing and clanging and this horrible thing, and bloodline almost being like a horror movie. But that's not what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about the bloodline of the human race. This is the reason why I don't want us fighting and arguing and discriminating anymore. We need to be honest and real about the fact we're one big, giant human club. We all bleed, we all feel pain, we all get disappointed, we all have our own hangups. We can either sit around and park on them and sit at the station and do nothing about it, or we can get focused and find meaning and purpose in our lives and go after our vision. And if everybody was going after a vision that was truly about self-love, then the only thing they would have to share with the world is love. The only thing they would choose to discriminate against, the only spectrum of choice they would ever have, is a positive one for themselves, their family, their friends, and even people they've never met before. So, some of you might be asking, dude, you went through all of this. Like, what in the world was that sound? Oh, yeah. The sound you heard was your future calling. You should tell him I said what's up.